working remotely from south of France at the moment. Yes, I'm with my sons, my partner, but working remotely. I'm generally based in New York, where I'm completing a PhD at Columbia, which will be a second PhD. And this is actually directly related to Optimalex, as an unfortunate personal and professional experience 15 years ago forced me, intellectually at least, to go back to school. And this is how I had the idea of Optimalex. Maybe that we can talk about.
And we are going to jump into Optimalex in 2 seconds because you are working on a second PhD.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind
Yeah,
elaborating a little bit about that? Because that's not a common thing. I know people that
right.
made two masters or couldn't really figure out what they want to do with their life and did another a bachelor degree, a second PhD. What was the first
Yes.
one?
So, well, my primary background is business and economics, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I worked for a long time, almost 30 years, as a consultant, first with Bain and Company, and then with my own boutique specializing in mergers and acquisition. And that was during those period, more than 10 years ago, that I had this unfortunate experience I was talking about, where I realized that in certain circumstances, when you have a damage, either personal damages like bodily injury, we will talk about that in a minute, or even business damages, uh, many situations you cannot quantify precisely the damages, especially if it is in the future. What about pain and suffering, for instance? When you have a car crash, it's very easy to quantify the material damages, maybe the lost earnings, a little bit less to quantify the medical expenses in the future. And what about the pain and suffering, right? We are talking of water ski. What about if I were injured in an accident, and usually I was enjoying water ski with my family every weekend? This is a hypothetical, of course.
Hmm.
I don't have the chance to do that every weekend. And now, after the accident, I cannot enjoy water ski anymore. I cannot share that with my family. How do you quantify this lack of enjoyment, this pain and suffering, as we say in insurance verbiage? It's very difficult. And I realized that when you cannot quantify, it's very difficult to be compensated. So that's how I started my first PhD in comparative law and economics between France and the US. And after doing the first one, completed at La Sorbonne in Paris,
Ah,
I joined Columbia as a visiting scholar and then as a PhD student at Columbia Law School to complete the second degree, which is called JSD at Columbia Law School, which is basically a PhD in law. And I have developed during those research algorithm to reduce the uncertainty and quantify damages, how to compensate damages, hence Optimalex. And we can talk more about it if you want.
and that's the perfect segue, right? So let's talk about your startup and how, from a very profound academic background and a lot of consulting, especially Bain and your own consultancy, now you're a founder and you're actually it's a SaaS company. So
Yes,
tell us about your startup.
that's a really a combination of chance and will. Initially, when I started those PhD, it was more an intellectual challenge. I wanted to understand how the law was done in order to compensate or not compensate certain damages. And I wanted also to improve, at least intellectually again, the possibility of quantifying more uncertain damages. And in the course of those research, I met with two of my current co-founders,
Hmm.
two brilliant, one engineer, one lawyer, one French and one Indian American. and then a third co-founder, and we founded Optimalex, the four of us, exactly 2 years ago. It was incorporated 2 years ago, even though the research is more than 10 years now. So this is what we do. We have put together data science, law and economics, computer science to reduce the uncertainty of damages when they are really uncertain, sometimes very high numbers, sometimes zero. And by developing this alternative legal theory saying that every case is not unique, you always can cluster cases or damages for that matter with similar situations, similar circumstances, similar venues, then you develop patterns. And if you understand the good law of certain legal situation and you accumulate enough data, you can develop patterns that covers those legal situations. And when a new case happens in this legal situation, then automatically the technology compare this new case with the existing cases in the past. And for instance, we use litigated cases. All those cases mostly are publicly available. What is not available is the relevant data. So we have developed natural language processing techniques to extract, curate, and structure this data and to use it as a basis for the prediction of the new cases.
So are you selling that? So okay, that's the algorithm, that's the motivation. So what is the actual product that you're selling and who is your customer?
Customers today are mainly insurance companies. So they can be, of course, carriers, they can be TPAs, MGAs. We can, today we don't, but we can also accommodate plaintiff lawyers are actually a perfect fit for our software. It's a decision support tool. It's a SaaS software, SaaS solution, where the claim manager, for instance, or the claim adjuster, anytime they have a new case, even before it becomes a litigated case or even before a lawyer is appointed, they can use this interface to streamline the claim management, to document the key information that they have access to. Initially, it can be a very small amount of data. And progressively, by adding the data, we can provide with more and more accurate prediction.
So
Prediction about, yeah, go ahead.
no, sorry, I cut you off. So
No. So we can provide prediction about the outcome. This case would be more settled or litigated, depending on the circumstances, again, on the venues, on the amount, of course, the type of injuries. Um, then we can predict if you settle, we can provide a range of fair values. Fair doesn't mean necessarily lower, it can be quite expensive sometimes, but in general, on average, it is lower than what our clients do. On average, that means some some claims are today clearly undercompensated, but some claims go unnecessarily very far into settlement, later settlement, or litigation, and those are very, very overcompensated. And
so
so, what we provide
mhm.
are fair values in order to make consistent compensation. This has two effects. One is to reduce the cost, the loss ratio is improved for the insurance, but also it makes the outcome more consistent, the damages compensation more fair. And so, even for the victim or the client, let's say the insured person, it is very valuable because they save time, they save anxiety, and they are sure to be compensated the fair value instead of going in litigation, where, of course, they can enjoy a social inflation, but most of the time they have nothing on litigation.
So it sounds to me that giving that model that you presented, it's something that the SIU will be the first adapter because within the claims organization, they will understand that, okay, we need to understand what is the cost, write the check, and stop it in the bottom of the pyramid. Because as we progress within the pyramid of the claims, it's going to reach litigation, and that means, or settlement, and that means, of course, more expensive. You will start to incur all kinds of costs from the insurer side, of course, insurer side, which means that now you have legal costs, your loss ratio is going to be F up, and you don't want to reach it. So if you can cut the check as fast as possible, here is actually a legal prediction tool or legal cost prediction tool that you can assign to that. So completely makes sense. And usually the sort of the SIUs or the different TPAs, although the TPAs, I wonder if they have a conflict of interest there because they want it to be longer and maybe a little bit higher because they are being compensated according to that, and not about, okay, let's process as many cases as possible, as short time possible, so there will be a good I forgot the word for that now. That's amazing. Actually, I have
Yeah,
the
the
medallion
reserve.
here. NPS score. Oh,
Okay, MPS score.
it took me a couple of very, very, very long seconds to remember the Net Promoter Score, or T.
Yes.
NPS, the transaction promoter, which is very specific, which is not for this case. So interesting. So are you working with carriers and TPAs today, or this is still in the flux?
No, we have signed some insurance carriers. For the moment, we are still under NDA, non-disclosure agreement.
Mm-hmm.
We will be hopefully able to reveal the identity, the names, and communicate officially before the ITC Connect in Las Vegas, where we will be attending for the first year. So hopefully in September, I will be able to tell who they are. But anyway, they are mainstream, insurance carriers. We don't work today with any TPA, but I understand your conflict of interest point, which is a very valid point. I think the largest ones are not the ones who
I
want
need to
to.
add like a very big, the fact that I'm saying that, we need to add like a big question mark because it's an assumption. Maybe
Yeah,
there is a good chance that I'm wrong there. So,
you can have the same assumption for defense lawyers, for instance. Some of them,
mm-hmm.
as you know, are paid with the time, so billing hours. But the most advanced companies, being TPAs or others, uh, they don't want necessarily to maximize the amount they are paid on one single case. They want to maximize the relationship with their clients, in that case, the insurance carriers. If their clients are happy, they will eventually have more business, and this is how they will compensate for potential shorter or lower amount of compensation. But
I would.
anyway,
Mhm.
yeah.
No, I would love to see that as you progress and gather data in terms of the performance of your tool and compare it to the way that it operates today. Because at the end of the day, you are saving money to the insurance companies and making them more efficient, improving
Yes.
their loss ratio and other important KPIs. Do you know today, or do you remember the numbers of how much they spent on cases, and what's the prediction how much you can improve?
Right. So there is one very important performance indication is the loss ratio. And of course, it depends on the companies, but the loss ratio is really a summary of their performance as far as claim and compensation are concerned. So let's say a company which is more or less on the average, 75%, 70%, maybe a little bit more loss ratio. We estimate that over time we can save them about 10% of this loss ratio. So a company with 70% loss ratio, over time, if they implement Agata, our legal prediction analytics tool, they can save and they can reduce to 65, let's say 65% instead of 70, or 70
Mm-hmm.
instead of 75. Of course, that means calibrating the algorithm, because today Our algorithms are mainly uh, supplied or delivered with litigated data. They are public data, and again, they are unstructured data. Our technology to structure the data that we need. It's very important to understand that all cases is like any case is a very, very large number of data, not structured. The relevant data, those data that are useful to make the prediction, are maybe 10% of the total. And we know which one are the 10%. We extract, we curate them. But there are also some settlement data, and those are mainly private data. So we work with database, private database that we partner with, and we work also mainly with our clients' data to make the prediction more relevant to their own track record. So when we start with a pilot client, the
Hmm.
first step is to define the key performance indicator, the KPIs we are mentioning. Most of them would say, I would like to reduce the loss ratio, but there can be some others, like the time spent, like the customer satisfaction, possibly. It can be, you can have litigation fees or proceeding fees, mock trials. We have one client who said, I want to reduce the mock trials fees. It's a huge amount per each case. And
Hmm.
if Optimalex can replace mock trials, for me, it's all benefit. So you see, you can define key KPIs, and then we run a first test of the algorithm prediction compared to existing cases, to cases that were closed, so that we can calibrate our internal prediction to the actual amount or to the actual quantum of compensation our client has done in the past.
I
Then
love
we
it.
ingest
Hmm.
their data, and then we run again the algorithm, which will be more relevant to their own track record. And it is a repetition. Of course, it is the pilot can last 1 year. And over the pilot, of course, we aim at increasing the performance, both in lab and in reality. Once we are comfortable with the track record, we go full blast on the market.
I love it because you already stated the solution to one of the biggest problems that we have for SaaS startups in the insurance space. And basically, it's creating a specific use case and then scaling it up. The challenge is coming from how do we boil, or to be precise, most of the mistake that most of the startups that coming into the space, and we've seen a lot of maturity since the beginning, right? They all try to boil the ocean, right? It's like, oh my God, we're going to make everything is broken. We're going to change everything. We're going to make it amazing. Luckily, it's not huge. So what they just shot everything and ran it with bullets instead of like, okay, here is a very specific niche. This is what we're going after. We're going to make it happen. And in your case, or this example, we're going to save you the money on mock trials. It's the sum of it is, I don't know, a few $1 million. And from there, we're going to increase our services, same technology, and we're going to provide other solutions, which is fantastic because then you can show a showcase. You can show how
Yeah.
strong your technology is and go from there. And listen, I'm a big believer that that's the way, especially today where we are standing in August 2022, that's what can help insurance. It's data, what you can do with the data, and applying that in a fair way. And that's a big challenge because we've seen in the past few years that it was all about, oh, what can we do with this data, personalization, all kinds of different predictions. But they were a little bit on the gray zone of how much you're going to increase premiums and be unfair to your policyholders and create a couple of things that are, let's say this way, not fair and against the concept of the regulation. And here you actually, okay, we have a tool that will help you to be faster and fair to your policyholders. And with that, of course, have a better, more efficient. And if you're making the insurance company more efficient, you're actually being more fair to the policyholders because ideally, at the end, it's going to reduce the premiums, especially if you're selling it to mutuals.
Exactly, exactly.
But that will be, a very long cycle that it's not that easy to make happen. No, very cool, man. Very, very cool. So, how are you? Let me, if we are talking about the startup structure and you're in early stage with 10 years of research and decades of experience that you and your two other co-founders bring, who do you identify as competitors and how are you, selling your value proposition or differentiation? So it's more about the differentiation.
Right. I think our differentiation is legal predictive analytics. We have many indirect competitors doing and providing predictive analytics. Basically, they accumulate the data and they try to make predictions out of the data. Of course, we do that, but how we differentiate is by adding our legal competence. We are lawyers trained
Mm-hmm.
in data science. So one of my partner, who is a co-founder of the company, Joanne, is also PhD in law, and we have this competence to analyze the situation, to develop a theory which is using the good law, and from there develop the data science and then the user interface that makes sense for our users. uh, One of my other co-founder, Love, is a data scientist. But I can tell you that working after several years with lawyers, he can explain you the law that, of course, he was not trained yet, very, very, very simply, because we are not, again, we are not here to hide anything to our client. What we try to provide are predictions that are fair, and I think it's very, very important point what you mentioned. Eventually, it will benefit also the insured person, that are fair and make sense legally. If we make predictions that cannot be interpreted, it's kind of weird, and we are very reluctant to provide them bluntly to our client. What we
Mm-hmm.
try is to identify a prediction that we can explain, at least legally, law and economics, right? So this is very important. All our clients and prospects own a huge amount of data. I mean, they are very, very data rich. The point is, they don't necessarily own the technology to identify what is gold within this data to make the prediction. Not everything is gold to make the prediction. And we differentiate by knowing the law and economics and also the data science and combine together.
So I think that, hmm, I hope that this episode will be well, it will be, I hope, early September and not after ITC. And I plan to be on the first or second week of September again in New York. So hopefully we'll have the opportunity to grab coffee together. What are
Sure.
your plans for ITC? And before that, hey, shout out to Bill, Megan, or Theo, and and Josh and the rest of the ITC team. What are your plans for ITC?
So first, we are very, very pleased and honored to be part of ITC this year for the first time. Right? We are a young company, of course, and for us, it's a major investment to be there. I will be with two other colleagues of the company. We are actually applying for the ITC Connect presentation. I think it is this year sponsored by State Farm, if I'm not wrong. And of course, we will be communicating our partnership that was just signed a few days ago. Hopefully, we can communicate that on the 1st of September, actually, but this is a plan. And of course, we will make demonstration on site. So I invite any of your audience or, you know, uh, any of the person in the insurance industry who is watching your podcast or your video, Gilad, to come and meet us at InsurTech Connect Las Vegas. We will be very happy to make a personalized demo even to offer a free trial for those who are interested to try the software, and to start pilot with them over the course of the next year. So this is how we work. Um, and yeah, I guess I'm waiting for more news. I think we are waiting for news from ITC at the end of this week to know more the content of how we can present our software.
Well, best of luck with that. And
Thank you,
it's
Gilad.
ITC, that's a place to do it. Everyone is coming all over the place, which reminds me, I need to talk to the people from DIA, especially when now there is a merge between the two brands. And yeah, but that's a side note. Anyway, so we are reaching the end of the episode, so I'm going to ask you the last question that I'm asking everyone. Can you give the audience some sort of a recommendation? It can be a life hack, it can be a good book, a show, or a movie that you've seen recently. Maybe how to get into water skis, because I know while I tried it many times, I think that I spent more time falling and in the water than actually on top of the skis.
Well, all that is connected. My word is repeat, repeat to correct any mistake and succeed from your failure. This is exactly how I did the research. This is how we started Optimalex. And eventually, this is how we are helping our clients, because they do a wonderful job overall. And we try to take any, any limitations and turn it into an asset by, of course, adding data, by, of course, adding legal analytics, legal predictive analytics. It's an endless process. It's a continuous improvement. That's why repeat and learn from your mistake is my last word.
Fantastic. Frank, thank you very, very much for joining me today. Thank you for your time and wisdom.
Thank you, Gilad. Thank you for having me. It's great to see how passionate you are about this industry. And I hope to see you in New York very soon, in early September.
Cheers. Have a good one.
Bye.